I think we're ready to go with whoever's here.
Great, thank you, Stacy. If you wouldn't mind pushing record.
Okay, done.
Welcome everyone to the National Pollution Prevention Roundtable's Food and Beverage Working Group webinar. I'm Trish Donahue from the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute. And if you wouldn't mind, now that we've had a little bit of a check-in, if you wouldn't mind just muting your phone or your computer to reduce the background noise. So again, I'm Trish Donahue, and I'm joined here with my colleague, Missy Hall. I'm one of the program managers for our Sustainable Supply Chain program, which you'll hear a little bit about today. I'm also one of an engineer that works on multiple projects. I've been with the Institute now for over 8 years, and as you'll hear, our Institute has been around for just over 11 years. Missy.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be on this call today. Within the food sphere, I manage the work that P2I does to support companies with food waste reduction, diversion, and in some cases, valorization or upcycling, which I'll talk a little bit more about today. I'm also one of our staff engineers, so I work on those projects as well as managing them, and I've been with P2I for about 3.5 years.
So it's our pleasure to share with you today our pollution prevention efforts in New York State with regard to the food and beverage sector. We work across New York State on many different types of manufacturing, many different types of sectors, but today's focus is on food and beverage for the purposes of this workshop. So we will just provide a quick overview of our institute. We'll share some of our work through case studies and food and beverage assistance efforts. We'll then go through pollution prevention tools that we've created, as well as the technical transfer that we tried to do with other companies so that they can learn and implement these same efforts within their own companies. And then we'll share with you a little bit about our future efforts. Today, we hope to give you a flavor for what we do in hopes that it will inspire you to do similar work in your area, your state, your community. And so with that, Missy will give a bit of an overview of our institute and then some background about our relationships across New York State.
Thanks, Trish. So as she said a minute ago, P2I has been around for about 11 years. We're housed at the Rochester Institute of Technology in Rochester, New York. We have about $3.9 million of funding annually through the state that's administered by the Department of Environmental Conservation, and we have a variety of different focus areas within the sustainability or pollution prevention umbrella that allows us to reach a variety of different types of companies, manufacturers, community organizations, and municipalities in some cases, and that includes things like food waste diversion, outreach and education, research and development, as well as supply chain sustainability.
So as Missy mentioned, we are located at the Rochester Institute of Technology, and if you're not familiar with our university, we were founded quite some time ago, back in 1829, as a technical institute, really trying to educate folks to really be technical out in the workplace. And so over the years, we've developed into a very large university that's private. It's now co-ed. We have about 19,000 undergraduate students, so we're one of the larger private universities in the country. But we also have international locations. At RIT, we are located within the Golisano Institute for Sustainability, which has also been around for about 20 years. We've expanded their efforts into also having academic programs now, so a master's in sustainable systems, the first PhD in sustainability in the country, and a master's of sustainable architecture. But within the Golisano Institute for Sustainability, we've been doing a lot of efforts for industry globally for many years, technical problem solving, applied research and development for those manufacturers, and we have a professional staff that works exclusively on these industrial engagements, meaning that many of our staff have been professionals within manufacturing in the past, and their sole focus here is on these industrial clients as opposed to doing any kind of teaching or being professors or faculty. Just a little bit more about the Golisano Institute for Sustainability. We do have a Center of Excellence funded by the federal government in advancement and sustainable manufacturing. We also have a Center for Sustainable Energy Systems and Nanopower Research Laboratory, a Center for Remanufacturing and Resource Recovery, and also a Center for Sustainable Mobility, meaning sustainable transportation. So there's a lot going on in our institution with a very small staff, but our focus today really is on the Pollution Prevention Institute, and Missy can describe a bit about our partners.
Trish, I'm sorry to interrupt. My screen just shows your first slide, and I think you're probably going to a couple of, you're probably now on slide 2 or 3. I'm not sure if that's just me, but maybe you could like stop sharing and then start sharing again in order to reset the. Okay, so yeah, so now I don't see your screen. Sorry, it's okay. We were all listening very carefully.
I'm glad you stopped me before we kept on going.
So now I don't see your desktop at all. I just see all the windows of the participants, which is fine. So I'll give you a second to, share your screen again.
Why does this always happen with webinars?
Yes, technology is not perfect, but I think this is a forgiving group, so it's okay. So down at the bottom of your screen, there's that bar. Does it say share? Oh, there we go. Okay, great. So now I see your screen. We're still with the first slide. So you may want to go to like slide presentation.
What do you see? Go to the next slide.
I still just see the first slide.
Do you see the second slide now?
No.
I bet it's because you're duplicating.
I'm going to unplug from the screen. Can
Yeah.
you pull it up on your thing?
Okay. I think we got it, hopefully in a second.
Okay. Okay. So now we see the agenda on the left and the next slide on the right. Oh, lovely. There's slide 2. Wonderful. There's the agenda.
Do you see the next slide that's on the right-hand side or just the agenda slide?
Just the agenda slide.
Okay, great. But I can't see it. It's not letting me put my...
You guys still following us?
There, I see the agenda.
Okay, perfect.
There we go. There's slide 3. There we go. That's all about NYS P2. Wonderful.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. Murphy's Law always rules.
That's right.
We were all set up in the beginning. So this is just a little bit about the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute, all those stats and details that we were mentioning before. We are located at the Rochester Institute of Technology within the Golisano Institute for Sustainability. These are all of the different offerings from the Golisano Institute for Sustainability. And now we will focus on back to our own institute, the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute, and our resource network. Can you see this slide, resource network?
Yes.
Yes, see it, yeah.
Great.
Okay.
So within P2I itself, we are a statewide organization, and New York's a pretty big place, and in order to better service everyone, we have a series of partners, as you can see, through various universities that we work with, some incubators, and then our manufacturing extension partnership centers. And, we have many other partners in addition to these folks, but this allows us to better connect with companies and organizations around New York to provide them the technical expertise that they're interested in order to allow them to be more sustainable. So, you know, Trish and I could probably talk about our organization all day. You know, we have several key thrust areas within our organization, but the one that we will illustrate most today is our technical assistance that we apply directly with companies that are New York State based. You know, most of our labor involved in this type of work is covered with our state dollars. So the typical project that we work on is anywhere between $15,000 and $50,000, and that's our labor to do the work. Based on our main funding stream, you know, we're not able to use those dollars to buy capital for companies or pass through to them to allow them to buy capital. So our dollars are really spent on our work directly with companies. That being said, you know, we have diversified our funding offerings through RET and P2I in certain areas that does allow us to help companies with implementation dollars, and I'll go over that in detail later on in the presentation. And I think as we get into some of the case studies going through this work in the food and beverage industry, you'll see that we offer detailed and in-depth support over a fairly short period of time, whereas some technical assistance that's offered by similar institutions is very, I wouldn't say high level, but can be like a single event with a company, whereas we are doing a lot of hand-holding and working with them to assess and help implement P2 solutions. So this is just illustrating some of the beverage clients that we've worked with over the years in New York State. We work with, you know, small startups all the way through multinational companies that are looking to implement pollution prevention solutions, and that also includes food companies. You know, we, again, work anywhere from ice cream to pet food to, you know, hot dogs to other types of food processing. So we run the full gambit in terms of food and beverage companies. It's a huge part of New York State and what we offer. So transitioning some to one of the case studies that I want to bring up. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see typical projects when we're working directly with food and beverage companies. We oftentimes are looking to assess opportunities that can lead to productivity and efficiency gains within water conservation and energy savings. And so we do both that technical assessment as well as the economic feasibility and help clients understand the opportunities for implementation. So that could be water conservation, chemical and material use, and other P2 technologies. And as an example on the right-hand side, through working with a couple different companies, this is kind of a summation of the typical work we might do on the water side. You know, we look in their production areas, we do research and testing on potential water and wastewater reduction methods in order to allow them to potentially save, you know, thousands of dollars a year, reduce more than 30% of their water use. You know, we're looking at opportunities to introduce low-flow spray nozzles, clean in place, manual to automatic clean out of place machines, and a variety of other techniques in this area.
So in addition to that very technical, hands-on, process-oriented type of assistance, We also provide assistance to identify opportunities for companies to be more competitively positioned in the marketplace so that they can be seen as a sustainable business or a sustainable supplier to their customers. And oftentimes through our Sustainable Supply Chain program, we offer different types of assistance like supply chain assessments and sustainability plans. Maybe possibly customer scorecards or questionnaires are received by our clients and they just simply don't know how to answer those questions about sustainability. Maybe they're a smaller, medium-sized company and they aren't sure what kinds of data that needs to be collected in order to answer the questions that are being asked of them. So we step in and help them figure that out, set goals and targets for future continuous improvement. We also help out with readiness preparation for eco labels, whether that's like a USDA organic label or maybe it's ISO 14001. We also do sustainable sourcing and procurement. Some companies are very interested in saying that they are a sustainable company, but in order to say that, they need to be able to purchase ingredients or components, parts that are coming from sustainable suppliers themselves. So they might want to create a code of conduct and also their own questionnaire for their suppliers. So we help them develop those. And finally, something that we've been seeing an awful lot of, this is a very trending request, is zero waste to landfill. Some want to pursue certification, others do not, but they don't even know how to define what zero waste to landfill is, but they know that they want to have it as a corporate goal. So we help guide them along some of the standards that exist out there, ones that they could choose from that are most closely aligned with how they would like to pursue their zero waste to landfill, especially trying to reduce the amount of food that's going to a landfill and trying to find alternative ways like an aerobic digester or composting as opposed to land spreading, which might be an alternative that many of them currently do. So in this particular case study on the right-hand side, this has to do with a sustainability plan and identifying gaps in a company's practices. Those companies that you see down on the bottom, Glenora, Baldwin-Richardson Foods, Warbach, Fox Run, and Owaka, all of these food and beverage manufacturers have all wanted to create a business that is more sustainable through strategizing and setting targets and ultimately reporting their sustainability efforts out onto their website or in a corporate responsibility report. Be able to really articulate to their customers why they are a sustainable company and why that customer wants to do business with them as opposed to some other competition. So the work that we did was first we've created an assessment tool that we use. It's not necessarily for the company to use, but it's a tool that has taken into consideration international standards and guidance principles like GRI and CDP and several others to inquire about common components for all sorts of environmental impacts and social and sustainability impacts that are very common. What we've seen is that the companies that have had this type of an assessment anticipate about a 10% increase in sales because now they are able to give that message about their sustainability efforts and how well they're doing, especially through continuous improvement. And because of this increase in sales, they have about a 10% increase in job growth. That's one of the metrics that we have within our organization because we are funded by New York State is wanting to know if the work that we do is increasing business, growing jobs, and actually retaining jobs at the companies that we assist. We also, in these projects, look at measuring the impacts and setting objectives and targets to track performance. Some companies may not even have a sustainability policy or know what action plans to take, but they are able to now speak to this through their marketing and communications material. And also we educate them on purchasing alternatives. So if there's something, a raw material that maybe isn't harvested in a sustainable way, we might try and find an alternative material for them to look into. A couple of other examples of this work that we've done is with Ovenly. They are a certified B Corp, and then they've been very focused on their social impacts, but they wanted to improve their environmental impacts and focus on waste reduction within this bakery. So Ovenly, they're located down in Brooklyn, and they have really started to expand and grow their footprint in the New York City area. And they wanted to continue to attract millennials and other sustainability-minded types of customers. And so, again, they wanted to improve upon their environmental impacts, mostly because if they had any wasted food products or like burnt cookies, for example, they wanted to reduce that, that waste that was being generated. And so we helped in doing a 5S type of approach in their kitchen. Ledestri is an ISO 14001 client. They have requests from their customers that in order to do business, they needed to be ISO 14001 certified. Ledestri makes spaghetti sauce and salsas that you've probably seen Paul Newman's line, Newman's Own. A lot of their products are made at Ledestri. And North American Breweries was interested in that zero waste to landfill type of effort. And North American Breweries is one of the 10 largest breweries in the United States. And so that was quite an effort on their part. This next one has to do with Green Technology Accelerator Center, which is another program that we offer where if a company has a prototype for a new product or a process that offers an advantage to the environment over another product that's already in the marketplace, then we try to help this company evaluate and identify the positive aspects of their product. We might do some testing and evaluation to prove that it does have a better benefit than something else out there. We might do some life cycle assessments, competitive product benchmarking, and really market viability. And so in this particular case, Capro X, this is a very interesting one. In New York State, we pride ourselves as being the yogurt capital, our governor likes to say, and the Greek yogurt industry that has really blossomed over the last several years has now become a $4 billion industry per year of Greek yogurt being consumed, which, if you are familiar with the Greek yogurt manufacturing process, it has acid whey as a byproduct, and there's over 100 million gallons of acid whey produced per year. And this is not something that is easily gotten rid of or disposed of. There's a lot of it, and everyone is trying to find an alternative use for it. So Capro X had approached us with their fermentation bioprocess technology. Sounds like a lot, but basically they have equipment that can change acid whey into a more viable oil product that can potentially replace palm oil. So our efforts were to compare the calculated energy use and greenhouse gas impacts for this Capro X technology and compare it against anaerobic digestion of whey, and also compare it against palm oil production and how much energy and greenhouse gas emissions were being emitted from these other types of processes. And so it was actually identified that Capro X's technology has a 93% decrease in energy use and a 92% decrease in greenhouse gas emissions per gallon of whey as compared to these other processes. So everyone probably is familiar with the palm oil industry and how it's having such a detrimental effect to the biodiversity in certain areas of our planet because it's used in so many baked goods and a lot of food resources. And Indonesia is one of those biodiverse areas where palm oil production and harvesting is really taking its toll. So by using acid whey as a waste byproduct and turning it into something that is useful within food products, then hopefully it's a win-win.
Another project type case study I'll illustrate here. We worked with Wegmans and Ledestri together on a project. But before I get to that case study, just in general, when we're working with companies that are looking to reduce or manage their food waste, you know, we may go in there and help quantify that for them, and not only volume, but characteristics of that waste, and that really changes opportunities for what can be done with it. We also look at areas for waste prevention and food donation of excess food coming out of different types of food institutions. We also work directly with companies to help them understand overcoming challenges associated with food waste management, because oftentimes we see that's people process rather than just a turnkey solution or a technology that will allow companies to do things differently with their food waste. And on that, we focus a lot on training and education and long-term sustainment of any new program that's introduced into a company. So flipping back, as an example, in the food and beverage industries, we work together with Wegmans, which is a large grocery retailer, and Ledestri, who Trish has already mentioned as a food processor, to help them understand opportunities with their operations for taking a single food stream or potentially waste stream coming out of their operations and turning that into new products that have economic value that comes back to these companies through dehydrating orange peels or excess fruit that isn't sold on the shelves, and seeing what kind of secondary markets there are for that shelf-stable product that comes with dehydration. And so we worked with a local sustainable agribusiness consultant that works specifically in this area, and we evaluated the feasibility around doing something like this for both of those companies. So before they invested, a lot of dollars into doing a pilot and figuring out what this would really mean to those companies, we did that first order analysis to understand if it was worth it for them to take that next step with logistics and storage and early marketing assessments around those new products. And based on what we observed, there is a lot of potential for these kinds of products to enter into new markets and allow these businesses to turn a waste into a value stream. So that was a very interesting project for us, and a great opportunity for companies to take a waste stream and do something new with it. Along those same lines, we worked with a company called Rhys Products, and they're based in the general New York City area, and they, work with local breweries to collect their spent grain and turn those into flours, different flour products that can be used in a variety of different applications. And so we worked with Rhys to analyze the flours they were getting out of the different breweries they were working with, to understand the different properties based on where the flours or the spent grain was coming from, and then assess the different market opportunities based on the characteristics of those flours. So we helped them, take the next step with their company to further integrate their product into existing markets with their enriched flours. So moving on, I think, again, we could go into additional case studies, but I think that gives you a good overview of the types of work that we do in this industry, from, valorization of waste to sustainability assessments, ISO 14001 support, as well as, food manufacturing and beverage manufacturing, like water reduction and energy savings. Moving on a little bit, as a statewide organization that leverages funding We also want to make sure that we're not just working with company by company by company and implementing isolated solutions, but we're turning those findings and other elements of our knowledge into broad scale solutions and tools that can be used by everyone. So we'll go into a few examples of that now. The first one here is our organic resource locator map. This is an interactive tool that we have on our website that maps out both the sources of organic waste, and if you can read on the right-hand side of your screen, you know, retail, restaurants, food processors, hospitality, etc., as well as the businesses that are collecting that material, such as anaerobic digesters or compost sites. And this is a tool that allows anyone to go in, click the area that they're interested in. You can also select the size of business based on waste generation, and then download information from this map. And the purpose of this tool is a couple of different, it's a multi-purpose tool, but it supports matchmaking from, you know, a restaurant to a food bank, or a hospital with a digester, as well as allows companies to cite new digester or compost facilities based on what is already existing and where the gap areas are. We've also seen it as a tool that's being used by researchers as well to do more systems views of interactions between waste generation and waste recovery and things of that nature. Another tool that we have available on our website is we have a food waste ebook, as we have it described, and this is an extensive information resource containing some of the common questions and themes that we see and talk to when we're working with different types of companies around New York. You know, this gets into the basics around understanding sources of waste, the general recycling basics around composting and anaerobic digestion, you know, how best to go about food donation, etc. This is pretty extensive of a workbook. In addition to this type of tool, and I won't go into all the detail, we also have materials and will continue to make materials that go into more nuanced detail at the next layer down that are more action oriented. So, you know, a restaurant could download one of our tools that goes into a step-by-step guide of starting a diversion program, which gets into, you know, how you create a pilot, where do you go to look for haulers, how do you engage with your team, what are the main elements of training and things of that nature. So we're trying to create materials on our website that hit different levels of information based on what the needs are of people that are looking to that material. So this ebook itself is at a pretty high level that gets people the base information that they need, but then between working with us directly and some of our other materials, they should get the knowledge that they need to continue to move forward in this space.
So aside from food waste, there is a Sustainable Winery Practices Guidebook. This is actually a self-assessment guidebook, quite different from the assessment tool that we've created within P2I to use at manufacturers. This is actually a self-assessment book for wineries to use so that they can evaluate themselves in 5 different areas, including sustainability planning, which covers their commitment and governance. It looks at water use and wastewater generation at the winery, energy use, material use, and waste management. And from these 5 different areas, there are a series of 4 sections for each area, starting with what we call scorecard questions. This is really meant to give a winery an idea of how knowledgeable they are in this particular topic area, and they can determine whether they really need to focus on something that they don't know, or validate that they do know quite a bit in a particular area. After they've taken this quick survey in the topic area, they then have an explanation of the subject matter. So now, while it seems a little bit backwards, why would you ask questions first? It's actually eye-opening to have the questions be presented first and then give an explanation of, say, water use and what some of the definitions are that were used in the scorecard questions, just to really, again, be an eye-opener and identify those gaps. And then after the explanation is improvement opportunities that the wineries could take. Maybe, again, it's in water use, and they should be using high pressure, low volume nozzles for spraying down their equipment. And then finally, there are case studies where available that show different projects that have been done at wineries and the changes that they made and found improvements on. So this self-assessment workbook was created along with Cornell University. It's not available online. It's really by request only, and so there's contact information down there. Chris Gerling at Cornell is the one that you could reach out to if you have an interest in taking a look at this workbook and being part of the test driving for it. Moving on to some future efforts that we are very excited about in the food and beverage space. First, we'll focus on breweries. This is such an interesting topic for many states right now. The craft brewery industry is just exploding everywhere. Here in New York State, we now have over 400 craft breweries. So we've been awarded an EPA SRA grant for the next 2 years, where we're going to focus on practical pollution prevention tools at those craft breweries. We're going to be looking at the focus areas of reducing water, chemicals, and energy use at each of 10 facilities. We're going to be doing some on-site assessments at 10 craft breweries, and then ultimately from those 10, we will select one lucky brewery to do an implementation of a P2 solution. So again, if it's like water use reduction, then we will help them with implementing those changes at their brewery. Then we will be creating a guidance document, sort of similar to the Winery Guidebook, except it won't be a questionnaire necessarily, but it will have some self-improvement types of tools that can be used along with some case studies of those 10 breweries that we worked with. And then ultimately, we will be hosting a summit to disseminate these best practices and exchange ideas with the network of these environmental experts, which include, again, Cornell. It also includes the Brewers Association, which is the national association, along with the New York State Brewers Association on our local level, and then a statewide organization called Fuse Hub, which oversees our manufacturing extension partnerships, which are across the United States, but Fuse Hub oversees the ones in New York State. So we're very excited to work on that project. And as you'll notice, I didn't mention supply chain for that particular brewer's grant, but we are working with the Carey Institute for Greater Good, and they are looking at very similar work, but looking at the supply chain itself. So the Carey Institute is going to conduct research and identify sustainable supplier practices and maybe some practices that you would like to avoid. We're going to be focusing on raw materials, so the harvesting of those ingredients and processing practices, also packaging for those raw materials, packaging for the beer itself, and also purchasing practices, so a code of conduct once again, and maybe looking for eco-logo certified suppliers. We will be delivering some outreach and education, so again, just trying to educate brewers on all of these good practices, and we will be visiting several breweries once again through this effort as well, and developing a code of conduct that all brewers could use throughout New York State eventually. And we will pilot that with 2 brewers who have 1 supplier each. Pilot that code of conduct and make amendments where we can, and then share that. We anticipate that the Carey Institute and this work that they are doing with us will be joined into the summit that is going to be provided through the EPA grant. So it'll be a nice summit that will show these environmental impacts for water, chemicals, and energy, and also a focus on the supply chain. So it'll give a really comprehensive view for brewers to make sustainability improvements overall.
And close to wrapping up, another future effort that we're looking into, in addition to continuing to provide technical assistance to this industry, we're looking to start up a food waste working group. And this really gets at the heart that you know, sharing and seeing experiences rather than just talking to them is very impactful. So when we have the opportunity to connect with local entities that have new equipment or have best practices with source reduction or are making a difference with donating food, connecting with industry to do demonstrations on those sites can be just as impactful as us, or even more impactful than, you know, P2I presenting on that material at a conference. And so we're really trying to establish a group in New York that has a go and see model rather than read about it online. This also is an opportunity for us to do more tech transfer in terms of workshops. So if we work with one food company that's done something innovative with valorizing some of their food waste, we can then do a tech transfer workshop with other like businesses and share the results of that and help them implement similar solutions in their businesses. So this is a pretty new endeavor for us, so I don't have as much detail as Trish provided on the EPA grant, but we're really looking forward to seeing what this will shape into and how businesses in New York respond to doing this kind of work. So more to come. And lastly, as I said earlier, we just also wanted to point out that we as an RIT has additional funding through New York State, through a different state agency, to help provide partial reimbursement of capital purchases made to divert food waste from landfill. And so this is a great opportunity for businesses to, you know, potentially get technical assistance from P2I and then also apply for capital funding. It's a great opportunity for us because in the past we've often been limited on the implementation side with this capital funding, and so over the next couple of years we will have this funding to help those businesses in this area, especially as New York gets more involved in food waste management. This is certainly a hot topic for us, and so as I said, this is we're pretty excited about having this funding and being able to help administer it.
So thank you, everyone. We appreciate you joining us today to hear more about the efforts that are taking place in New York State through our Pollution Prevention Institute. If you have an appetite for more information about our work, please contact us at the information that you see there on the screen. And if you're not already a member of the National Pollution Prevention Roundtable, we encourage you to join to receive more information on pollution prevention efforts across the country, like you saw today. And with that, Stacy, we can turn it to questions that anyone in the audience may have.
Great. So Trish and Misty, there's a chat window that you might be able to access at the bottom of your screen. It says chat, because I've noticed a couple of the participants have actually typed in questions, and I can certainly repeat those, but maybe you can see them on screen if you load that chat window.
I can. Okay. So Kai had a question about using acid whey. I imagine that there is resistance to using acid whey in food processing because it is an animal product. So it could not be used in vegetarian or vegan products. It may also be an issue for people with sensitivity to milk products. Did you come across this as a major issue? That brings up a great point. Acid whey is really an unusable byproduct. There isn't much that you can do with it. So that's really one of the reasons why they're trying so desperately to find a way to put it into other products. And as far as the vegan and vegetarian issue with that, I don't have a good answer, but we just know that it's not the protein whey that goes into protein drinks. Because it's an acid whey, it's really not usable, which is why it's a great opportunity for this technology that I mentioned with Capro X, if they could possibly turn it into something that is usable in food. And I'm sure there will be opportunities for looking at the vegan aspect of that. Missy, did you have any comments?
No.
Okay. The next question from Lisa is, I missed the introduction, so I'm not sure if zero waste to landfill was explained, but I am finding that the business I work with are focused on diversion rather than prevention. I often take a lot of time explaining diversion is not prevention. How is P2I talking to their businesses about this important difference? Lisa, that's a really great question. We always approach it as the waste hierarchy that the EPA has put out, and that source reduction is not diversion. You're exactly right. And that source diversion is really the first thing that companies should be focused on, just preventing the waste from being generated in the first place. So really taking a look at any opportunity that they have in their facility to incorporate more of their end product or byproduct into their product itself. But oftentimes we see that packaging is one of the largest areas of waste in a facility. And so we try to focus more on working with suppliers that maybe could change the way they package their product so that the burden is not placed on the company that we're working with or anyone else that's purchasing those products. But yeah, we take the approach of focusing on the hierarchy, and then with diversion, we focus on the recycling and reuse and even donations sometimes.
Also on that, depending on the industry that you're speaking to, oftentimes diversion ends up being the first step because it can be an easier place to start in terms of, changing out the outlet in which your current waste stream is going to. So that can be a place that, if a business is looking to get started, that we work with them on diversion and then help them transition to also having a prevention mindset, because a lot of times those do go hand in hand, and once you've got a foot in the door with something, it's easier to cascade into a little bit more of the challenging opportunities. Sometimes you do see quick wins on prevention, whether that be on food waste or other waste streams, but sometimes those require changing of packaging, changing of suppliers, behavior changing within your operation, and those take a little bit more capital, whether that be physical capital or mental capital, to help implement and sustain those changes. So we very much focus, as Trish said, on diversion and prevention, but sometimes different strategies need to be deployed depending on where the business is. On the food waste specifically, on that side specifically, prevention sometimes too is a great opportunity to us to work with businesses, because that's where you see cost savings. And so even though diversion is something that they can easily start with, we also encourage them to go with prevention, because they will hopefully see savings to their bottom line by not processing additional food that they're then throwing out.
Another couple of questions on the Winery workbook. So Chris Gerling from Cornell is available to answer any technical questions. He may even be willing to provide some technical assistance. I certainly welcome you to contact him, and I can put his information back up on the screen in a couple of minutes. And the Winery workbook really was meant to be focused on New York State wineries. However, it was built off of other efforts that have been done in other states for best practices. The state of California has a great winery workbook, and I think a few other states are coming up with their own as well. We have some unique issues in New York State. Long Island has a lot of wineries, which is on one end of the state, and then right in the middle of the state we have the Finger Lakes, which is the second largest winery region in the country after California's Napa Valley. So we have some unique and interesting things happening in New York, so that's why it was focused there and as part of our funding work in the state. A question about the breweries and other tools and checklists that have been done, because there's some other efforts happening across the country in that area. We are, in New York State, we are well connected with other, especially through the Pollution Prevention Roundtable as well. And yes, we're working with others. We are also on a group with the EPA calls. And so anytime there's an opportunity to share resources, we welcome people to share those with us, and we certainly are trying to share our information with others as well. And you're absolutely right, there's a lot going on. And so yes, that sharing is very valuable. Question about what would you say are the biggest obstacles in companies seeking or getting technical assistance?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about companies within New York, I hope those are pretty small in terms of barriers. I think some of the challenges can be even within company buy-in. So we may meet, you know, an energetic individual within a company that is looking for assistance to implement change in their organization, but they may be prevented by, you know, their management chain that isn't interested in supporting that kind of change within their organization. You know, that can be burdensome. A lot of, even though P2I has been around for 11 years, and I think we do a great job of outreach and, you know, making ourselves known, a lot of places still don't know about us. So even if they do have management buy-in, we still are an unknown entity in a lot of worlds within New York. So that can be a barrier as well, as just not knowing about P2I. Trish, do you have?
Just the only other thing that I thought I'd elaborate on is that while we do a lot of projects with companies, we make suggestions for them. And unfortunately, our funding does not cover capital equipment. So if one of our suggestions is for them to possibly replace a piece of equipment because what they have is old, and if they were to have something new, then it would be more efficient, save energy and things like that. Or maybe just that a new piece of equipment would really provide them with a greater product output so that they can sell more, but reduce those environmental impacts. Unfortunately, we don't have that capital funding, so companies oftentimes don't have that cash layout that they can put forth either, and so they don't necessarily always implement the things that we are recommending. And I think that's where we have the technical difficulty. But Missy's right, we are one of the best kept secrets in New York State. Unfortunately, a lot of companies just don't know that we exist, so we do a lot of conferences and a lot of webinars and just really trying to get the word out about us. So I think that's really where the barrier exists for companies making improvements.
Yeah, that, and I guess I would wrap up with two, is sometimes they have a lot of ideas. Companies have a lot of ideas, but they don't necessarily, it's hard to bring them and tie them down to any specific task or problem that they want to have solved. So we may talk with a company over several years and try to narrow their focus down into something that we can actually achieve, and we may never get there because they're too off into the clouds, which is great and innovative, but sometimes that's where there's a gap between what people want to have done and what we're capable of doing.
And I think one final question has to do with companies that we work with wanting to share their sustainability results, their metrics, their improvements. This goes back to the slide that talks about a sustainability plan and having made improvements in their goals and just trying to do data collection and metrics in order to set targets and see continuous improvement. Why would a company want to share that information? So the value proposition that we always share with companies as to why they want to communicate out to the world that they are doing these things is because in today's society, companies are being chosen for their sustainability efforts over those that are not sharing that kind of information. So you'll see that more and more companies are trying to have a page on their website that talks about sustainability or corporate responsibility. They're trying to get those messages out so that they can attract customers and retain customers. If we just talk about craft breweries, for example, with the pop-up of those 400 or so in New York State, how do you possibly have a customer stay true to you? How do you get them to be a repeat customer? And if you can show that sustainability is something that differentiates you from your competition, then hopefully customers will stay with you because they know that they're getting a better product, that you're concerned with the environment, that you're concerned with the community, that you're doing a lot of volunteerism perhaps. So just those kinds of messages are helping to differentiate companies. And while it may seem that their metrics about their water use or how much waste they're generating is being made public, the reason for doing that is to show that the efforts that they're going through to improve are really trying to make a difference. So they want to be able to say, here's where we were, but we set a target for ourselves. Here's where we want to be, and here's where our current results are. It's a great message oftentimes, and we wish that more companies would do that. I think that wraps it up for the questions online, Stacy.
Great. Does anybody else who's attending have a question they want to ask by voice that hasn't been on the chat line? Sounds like no. Sounds like everybody's happy.
Okay, I'm just trying to go back to the slide that has Chris Gerling's information on it, and it's frozen on this particular slide. So,
that's okay. On the chat, that somebody very kindly provided the contact info for Chris.
Okay.
So I think we're all set.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, but if anybody needs to get a hold of you for any more questions, I assume you're okay with me sharing or Joy sharing your info with our participants today?
Yep.
Yes.
Great, wonderful. Thank you both. That was excellent. Really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you for your time. Really
Thank you, everyone.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Congratulations. Job well done. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, thanks everyone. I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. And if you have any questions or anything, then contact Joy, who will be back in the office next week. So thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon.